Okay. Hello, everybody. All right. So, um, essentially, what we have is we had a bunch of questions on this paragraph over here, and I'm going to try to answer a few of them, and hopefully that in a manner that will bring out a main idea or theme. Um, so, we had some of our questions are the following. It says, "Avadim hayinu l'parav Mitzrayim." Right, we were Avadim to Paro in Egypt, right? So, I mean, it's pashut that Chazal wrote this. Right? So when you look at this and you examine it, it can't be, yeah, it's just saying things. Like every word has to mean something. So if I say we were slaves to Paro, obviously it was in Egypt. So what do you think of Mitzrayim? And then we said, okay. And then again, Misham, from there. What do you mean from there? From where else would he have taken us out? What are you talking about? You think that we're brain dead? Like, you just said we were Avadim Mitzrayim. So say that's the correct Hebrew grammar. What do you think Misham? What do you mean Misham? Okay. Then we said if God didn't take our forefathers out of Egypt, okay. So us, our children, our grandchildren will be meshubah to Paro in Egypt. So on this we had several questions. The first question we had was, what is, in general, it's a very, very strange thing for Chazal, the Torah, to ever consider an ilu, right? Chazal and the Torah, we address realities. We address what the facts are and what we need to do and what we need to understand and feel. We don't do theoretics, right? It's like you say by Hanukkah or by Purim or by Sukkot, or you're celebrating the Ananim, right? The clouds that went over Jewish people. Well, if there weren't any clouds, we would have died in the desert. So you have to be so grateful there are clouds. If Esther didn't go into the thing, we would have died. So we have to be so grateful. If the Chashmonaim, like, we would never say that. What do you mean, Ilu Lohotzi? What do you say, Ilu Lohotzi? Okay, he did, so appreciate what happened. That's like, what are you considering? You don't find this any other Chag. If the event that caused the Metzias of the Chag wouldn't have occurred, then we would have been in trouble. We don't find that. Even though a lot of times, obviously, the reason why it's a Chag is because it's relevant and it's very important and it's a building block of the nation's identity. Okay, so it's a shtam, it's a strange thing. Vaitru, though, not only is it strange, it's also seemingly, unwarranted, incorrect, right? Because, again, once Chazal do tell you, once they are putting the Ve'ilu in here, essentially what they're saying is, you have to consider, we want you to consider that there was a possibility that this wouldn't have happened. And that's not true, because we know that Hashem promised Avram Avinu, right, that he would take the Jewish people out. And the whole point of the promise, if you look at the context in the parsha, the whole context of the promise was, in other words, how am I going to know that the Jewish people are actually going to get the land of Eretz Yisrael? And so in response to that, he says, the Eglah Meshuleshes and the 4 Galuyos, and he promised to take it out. So in other words, you can't say, he promised Avram, but maybe, Cheto B'Garim or something. You can't say that, because the whole point of the promise in its context was because Avram was worried that they were gonna sin. That was the whole point. So in other words, God was promising him he was going to take them out on the heels of him saying maybe they'll sin. He said, even so, I promise you. And he said there'll be korbanos, etc., etc. You have to look in that parsha. But that's pasha. So it doesn't make sense that there shouldn't have been, we shouldn't even consider that reality, because even chronologically, during that time, at the time in history where Jewish people went out of Egypt, there wasn't a possibility that they wouldn't have gone out, because God had already promised. So that's another problem, right? And then we said, what is the deal over here? When it says Avadim hayinu l'parav Mitzrayim, and then it switches to, and if he didn't take us out, it should say it would still be Avadim, which is what we started off as, right? No, it switches to Mishubadim hayinu Laparo. And again, it says Bimitzrayim. Right? So that was another kasha we had. So I think the idea that I'm going to say is the following word is that, and this is brought out by this Shiva says this, where it says that, where it says that Hashem took us out from there, B'yad Chazaka of Israel Netuya. So, Chayra, he says that the order should be reversed, because the Yad Chazaka is the strong hand. In other words, it's the hand that God makes to hit the enemy. And then Zroa Netuya means Zroa is it refers to this entire part, and that's Netuya. It's stretched out like so, and then God takes us takes us out. The thing is that the way that it actually happened is that first God took us out, right? I mean, the way that it should describe it is God takes us out, and then after he takes us out, he drowned Paro in the Yam, or he took care of the Egyptians. So why is it saying that first Hashem did a Yad Chazaka, which doesn't refer to the outstretched arm that he took us. It refers to the act of punching down or showing his strength by doing something to the Egyptians, and then it's saying Zroa Netuya. So what he answers is the following thing. He says like this. He says that the vort is like this, is that V'yu Hotzi doesn't mean that God wouldn't have taken us out at all. It means he wouldn't V'yu Hotzi Beyar Chazaka of Zroa Netuya. It's going back on that as well. In other words, this Ve'ilu goes on everything here in this line, which includes the Beyar Chazaka of Zroa Netuya. And the word of the Beyar Chazaka of Zroa Netuya, and this is the way that God took us out of Mitzrayim. The word is that when when a nation is enslaved, right, and their identities are stripped from them, and they're told that they're simply extensions of their masters, right? So, if God, let's say, would have, right, which is a question that people ask, what was the point of having the 10 makos, first, right? And the Jewish people had stopped working by the 4th or 5th makkah. Why didn't God just take them out of Egypt, right? What's the shot that we make this whole big thing about Esther Makos all before they actually leave? Why is that done? Why do we do that? What was the necessity for such a process? Why not just clap your fingers? God can and just take us out and we're gone. I mean, it's yes Mitzrayim. What's this idea? So he says, where Shiva says, the word is like this: is that if, let's say, right, at the risk of being controversial or being shut down by YouTube, if, let's say, the African Americans that were enslaved, what happened was that you were enslaved, and then one day people got up and they decided, okay, now they're no longer going to be enslaved. That doesn't work. That doesn't work to restore the individuals who were enslaved back to their former selves, as we can very well see in America concerning the African Americans, which with the crime rate, etc., but obviously I'm not getting into any of that. That doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because it doesn't make sense. What do you mean? You're saying that enslaving me was a bad thing. It was a terrible, wrong, morally wrong thing to do. So now what? Now you're just going to wake up and decide, and now it's no longer? And because of the fact that you decided, the master decided that he no longer wants to enslave me, therefore he's going to let me go, and now I'm going to be free on his whim. So I'm still a slave. Meaning I did not see the fact of my being enslaved as a complete violation of what it means to be in reality. I did not experience the idea of me being enslaved as a complete aberration, something that should have never happened, something that was evil or ra. I didn't see that, right? In the case of the African Americans, it's just that, they woke up one day and decided to let them go. And therefore, you stay bereft of your sense of identity because it wasn't restored. The reason why it had to be that Kadosh Baruch Hu did Yad Chazaka first. He first did it Eser Makos. He first hardened Paro's heart, so that to the point of unreason, he decided to keep them until his entire country was in shambles, and he was made a complete fool of by his servants, etc., etc. Is the pshat that the Jewish people had to see, not, now, Shkoyach, Hashem is stronger than Paro and he can take them out. That doesn't help their senses of self. The pshat is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing them that Paro is a complete clown. He's a complete, the lashon of the pasuk is, Asher his'al'alti b'Mitzrayim. God says that he played with the Egyptians. He played with them. Not pshat, God is showing, I'm so much stronger. That doesn't help. That doesn't help for us. God, it was mis'alel. If you look at Rashi, it means he played them. He played jokes with them. In other words, that, you say you do want to release, but I'm going to make it that you don't want to release. And then I'm going to mevaz you. I'm going to hurt you more and more and more and more. Until when the Jewish people see to what level of detriment was caused by the fact that they were enslaved, they now understand that the reality of their enslavement was a complete aberration. It wasn't a norm. It wasn't what should be. And that is what will allow for the restoration of their identities. And therefore, it must have been that it would be biyad chazaka or b'zorah netuya. That in that fashion, where the so to speak previous master is completely destroyed and wiped and completely humiliated, to which the enslaved individual can understand and experience and see how really he was never a slave. And it's oiker, the entire thing made kara. Because you have to understand contextually in the point of history that the Jewish people had been enslaved for 4 generations. So your father is enslaved, your father's father is a slave, and his father is a slave. So the generation that's leaving, how are they gonna think that they're anything else but slaves? Right? And this is the manner that occurs. That's how this happens. And therefore, the way to read the paragraph is like this. In the manner in which we will be able to gain our own self-identities back, if we didn't do it that way, then right? We would be meshubat the par. And obviously, what we say, they said that the difference, and this is the answer to the second question, why does it change from avadim to meshubadim? Because meshubadim essentially means, meshubadim doesn't mean that you're not mamish a slave, but what does it mean? It means that the Baal Chov has a right. He has a zechus in the whatever it is, the karka, to take it at to be goyve as chov, which would mean that if we did not go out in this way, Paro would have a, so to speak, a zechus in us. He would have a right to us. Why? Because we would not have been clean from the mark of his enslavement. Because again, just like Nabach, the African Americans, it would never be that we would understand how our enslavement to him was a complete violation of everything that is right in the world. And that is why it changes from Avadim to Meshubadim. It's not saying, because otherwise, of course, you have to ask a kasha. I mean, what's the Haggadah actually saying? It's saying that, the Haggadah knows for a fact that if we wouldn't have gone out of Egypt then, that we would still be Meshubadim tomorrow, this many years later? I mean, what do you mean? How can you know that? What are you saying? It's like kingdoms come and go all the time. Egypt would have fallen, and then we would have been somewhere to someone else. But the word is that you would be in a space, right? In a space in which you are a meshubad. You are someone who doesn't have all of himself to himself. You're not zayt. You don't have all of you. Rather, someone else has chus in you. You're a meshubad. And I think most probably the the idea of the location, of the geography aspect of it, is that it ties into the way in which a person relates to the world around him based off where he is, which is why we find that there was actually an Isser to go back to Mitzrayim, right? So it's a very curious thing. I mean, it's an Isser to go back and live in the geographical location of Egypt. Why is that? Because you go back to that place, you're essentially digressing back to before your Yetzirah, because the location allows and it facilitates the person's you know the way that a person self perceives. And so if you're back in the location in which you were enslaved and you live there, which is the Isser, then that's something that the Torah does not want, and there's an Isser to do that. So that is the vort over here, and I hope this was useful and insightful, and I hope everybody has a wonderful Shabbos.